Well, it's a simple street scene, really. It's just a tree with fall colors, light sky, light gray road. Not much to it, right? So I'll dive in and see if I can get it finished before the rain comes. Our eyes are hungry for details, but it's the big shapes that we need to see. I've taken this photo and put it through a Photoshop filter to see the tree, the sky, and the road as simple shapes of tone. Okay, I've got sap green, yellow ochre, lemon yellow, purple red, terra rosa, raw umber, ultramarine blue, and white gouache. Using my watercolor pencil, I'm making blobs for the cars and drawing big lines for the edges of the trees and the road. But I'm really thinking not about line, but more about the shapes of those tones. And now I want to wet down the whole surface with a big flat brush and lightly wash in some tones. There's an orange tree in front of a greener tree. And that edge where it meets the sky is quite interesting. So while the paper is still wet, I'm dabbing at it to get some leafy edges to that silhouette of the tree. But while it's still wet, I want to knock in some of the darker areas. On an overcast day like this, the base of the trees is darker than the top margins. So that's where the darker accents will be. And you can see that in that Photoshop filtered thing where the dark accents are at the bottom of the tree mass and the top of the trees are lighter. Now, even though there's a lot of white paint in those buildings, they're not as bright white as the sky. So I'm going to gray them down a little bit just to get rid of that white of the paper. Now nearly an hour has gone by and I still haven't gotten any clearly painted details, just those big shapes. We're painting with my wife Jeanette and a friend Windsor, visiting from California, and I'll show you their paintings at the end. How are they doing so far? Let's see. What are you working on, Jeanette?
Doing a street scene.
What
I
stage
spent a
you
lot of
at?
time on the drawing, and these guys are almost done. And
Oh,
I'm
no.
finally
No, we're
getting
not.
to paint.
I'm a little lost.
Good feeling.
I'm a little lost, but
Well, being lost is a way to be. That's the state of mind to stay in.
there's been a cat walking through, which has lifted my spirits. So
I realize I got this street too high, and I got to make it lower so that I can get more of a feeling of the trees above the street. And that means painting out those cars that I had worked on. I want that street to be lower. And now I'm going to go into the trees. They're dry, and I want to paint those light leaves that gradate out of that mass of orange. The paint I'm using is quite thick, but it's almost dry on the brush. The darkest accents are underneath the cars. But up on the poles, those darks aren't really very dark because they're suffused with the light. So I'll put in some of those accents under the cars, and now I'll paint those poles 3 in a row. 1, 2, 3. And then I can come back in with the sky and paint over the edges of the foliage. For me, the challenge of painting is often seeing the big picture, the unity of the scene, the big shapes, while at the same time allowing myself to delve into the 10,000 things, as the Taoists would call it, the objects that we identify, that we name, that we give our attention to, the little specific things like the cars and the details on the poles. And we dive our focus down to those small objects because that's what we're sort of tuned to seeing. But at the same time, we have to back up and always remind ourselves, what's the big relationship of shapes, of tones, that first attracted us to this scene? If we have the big shapes right, we can paint just a few details and discard the rest. Well, the rain did start, so we came home and worked on our pictures a little bit from photos.
Yeah, I needed to put in the wires, and I was going to use a pencil for that, so that worked out fine.
It was such a magical afternoon, sketching with Jim and Jeanette, trying to finish our scenes before the rain clouds came in.
Okay, thanks for watching. You might want to check out my website or subscribe to my channel. And then here's a playlist with more good stuff and a video that continues the story. So check them out and share with your friends.